She was shunned from her daughter's celebration, forced to stand outside the glittering hall as laughter and music spilled into the night. But no one knew that every smile inside was shadowed by secrets that threatened to change everything. Emma Thompson, a widowed mother struggling to make ends meet, watched her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, clutching a glittering invitation she wasn't allowed to hand to her own mother. The air between them crackled with unspoken love and unyielding tension, and every glance from her ex-in-laws cut deeper than the winter wind. But who had the power to break through this wall of cruelty, and why would a mysterious millionaire suddenly step into their lives, changing what seemed impossible into hope? And more importantly, could Emma ever reclaim her place in her daughter's world before it was too late? Emma's breath came in shallow, cold bursts as she stood on the cobblestone path, watching the hall gleam with golden lights. Inside, her daughter's classmates ran gleefully past enormous balloon arches, their parents' laughter mingling with the tinkling of crystal glasses. Emma's eyes flicked to her ex-mother-in-law, Victoria Langley, tall and elegant in a designer gown, whispering with the city's elite, a woman whose wealth and influence dictated not just social events but who deserved to exist in her daughter's life. Victoria's husband, Harold, Emma's former father-in-law, clutched a glass of champagne, exuding quiet authority. Their smiles were polite but sharp, like knives wrapped in velvet. Emma crouched to Lily's level, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, I'm right here, okay?" Lily's small hand twitched, and she whispered, "Mom, why can't I?" "I know, darling," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I don't understand it either, but I promise, I'll always be with you. No matter what." Flashback 3 months earlier, Emma had sat at their tiny kitchen table, her husband gone, bills scattered like autumn leaves across the countertop. She had imagined a modest celebration for Lily of homemade cake, paper crowns, laughter filled with love instead of extravagance. But Victoria's voice had come down the line, clipped and commanding. "Emma, the Langley name deserves a celebration that shines in every paper, every social circle. Lily deserves the best. You will not be part of it if you cannot provide." Emma's gaze wandered to a reflection in the hall's glass doors. A tall man, impeccably dressed, lingered in the shadows observing her. Something familiar in his stance, the way he exuded quiet control, sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't yet know his name was Adrian Blackwell, a billionaire whose wealth and mysterious influence could change the course of her daughter's life. A subtle hint of connection flickered as Adrian watched her, foreshadowing a choice that would ripple through everyone's lives. A neighbor, Mrs. Harper, passed by, holding her umbrella. "Don't let them break you, Emma. Lily will remember you. Not this hall full of gold." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She thought back to nights spent in their tiny apartment, drawing balloons on scraps of paper, whispering to Lily, "Even if no one else is here, Mommy will always be with you." That memory, fragile yet fierce, ignited a spark of determination. Somewhere deep inside, Emma knew her story was far from over, and that the mysterious figure watching her might be the key to Ruth. Chill of the evening pressed against Emma as she sank onto the cold stone bench just a few feet from the hall's golden doors. The laughter and music continued to spill outward, a cruel reminder that she was outside invisible, while her daughter was inside, surrounded by wealth and influence she could never touch. She pressed her face into her hands, willing the tears to stay hidden, when a sleek black car pulled up silently to the curb. Its engine hummed quietly, but its presence commanded attention. Emma looked up, startled, and froze. The car door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, impeccably dressed. His presence was magnetic yet understated. Adrian Blackwell. His eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the scene and landed on Emma. She felt the weight of his gaze and, for reasons she couldn't explain, a flicker of recognition as if he understood her pain before she spoke it aloud. "Excuse me, are you okay?" His voice was calm, measured, carrying the ease of someone used to being obeyed without demanding it. Emma shook her head, brushing a stray hair from her face. I don't know if I can be," she whispered. "I'm trying to be here for my daughter, but I can't get inside. I don't even know why." Adrian crouched slightly, his gaze softening. "Sometimes, the hardest walls are built not by bricks, but by people who think they know what's best." I can see it in you, that you love her more than anything. A flashback cut across Emma's mind, her husband's gentle smile as he lifted Lily in his arms during her first birthday, laughing despite the tiny apartment, the cramped space, the modest cake. She deserves joy, he had whispered, even if it's small. That memory made her chest ache, a joy she could no longer afford, blocked by a social hierarchy she had never wanted to join. You don't know what it's like, Emma said, trying to mask her vulnerability. People can be cruel. My ex-mother-in-law. She won't let me near her. Adrian nodded knowingly. Power and wealth often blind people to love. But sometimes, one unexpected choice can turn everything around. His gaze flicked to the hall, then back to her. I think you're about to find out who can make that choice. Emma's brows furrowed. Who are you? Someone who knows what it's like to be on the outside, Adrian replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. And someone who believes a mother should never be barred from her child. A subtle foreshadowing flashed. Adrian's hands lingered near the watch on his wrist, a discreet symbol of both his wealth and the control he could exercise. Later, that small gesture would signal to Emma that the man standing before her wasn't just kind-hearted. He had influence, resources, and the power to rewrite her story entirely. Why would you help me? Emma asked, suspicion and hope battling in her chest. Adrian glanced at her with steady eyes. Let's just say, I have a vested interest in seeing the right people get what they deserve. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's intervention. As he spoke, Emma noticed Lily peeking nervously through the glass doors again. Her tiny fingers pressed against the window, hesitant but longing. Emma's heart tightened. Every microsecond felt charged with possibility. Could this stranger be the bridge to reclaiming her daughter's celebration? Or would she remain outside, watching another year slip away? Adrian extended a gloved hand, a subtle invitation, yet Emma hesitated. The weight of years spent fighting against exclusion and judgment made trust difficult. I don't know if I can, she said softly. Her eyes fixed on the glittering hall where Lily's laughter floated like a fragile melody just out of reach. You can, Adrian replied calmly, his voice threading certainty through the uncertainty in her chest. Sometimes the hardest step is the one toward hope. Emma glanced at him again, this time noticing the faint crease at the corner of his eyes. A sign of a man who had faced challenges despite the privilege he carried. She sensed his understanding wasn't superficial. Flashback to Adrian as a boy, seated at the edge of his father's grand office, a lonely air among gilded walls, overlooked by those who assumed wealth was enough to grant happiness. He had watched, in silence, as childhood friends were chosen for parties, while he waited outside, and seen. That memory lingered in him, shaping a man who would notice the overlooked, the rejected, and the unjustly barred. Emma swallowed hard, her chest tightening. It's not just the party, she admitted, her voice trembling. It's that my daughter, my own daughter, might start believing that love isn't enough, that her mother isn't enough. Adrian nodded, acknowledging the depth of her pain. Love is enough, he said quietly, but there was steel beneath the gentleness. Sometimes people in power forget that. Sometimes they test boundaries. But that doesn't mean the heart can't reach beyond them. Emma's gaze flicked toward Lily again, and she saw the flicker of longing in her daughter's eyes. The girl clutched a small gift, a tiny doll Emma had sewn herself, hidden under layers of wrapping, trying to shield it from her grandmother's watchful eyes. The moment, small but loaded with meaning, foreshadowed the later confrontation. Lily would choose love over fear, defying the authority that sought to suppress it. A sudden movement inside the hall caught Emma's attention. Victoria Langley had turned, her eyes narrowing, lips pressing into a thin line. There was a subtle power struggle in that glance, a micro-betrayal that would later erupt. The grandmother, determined to assert control, and knowingly planting the seeds for her own public humiliation. Adrian took a step closer, lowering his voice. Emma, you don't have to sneak in. You don't have to fight shadows alone. I can open the doors literally and figuratively. But first, you have to trust me. Emma hesitated, torn between fear and hope. Why me? She asked. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. Because I've seen what happens when the people who should protect love instead suppress it. And I've learned Some walls are meant to be broken, but only if someone strong enough stands at the threshold. The music from inside the hall swelled, and Emma felt a flutter of possibility. She could almost hear Lily whispering to her heart, "Mommy, come in. Don't let them keep you out." Adrian extended his hand again, and this time, Emma grasped it, a spark of courage igniting. The audience feels the tension, the stakes, and the curiosity. Who exactly is Adrian? How will he challenge Victoria's power? And can Emma truly step back into her daughter's life? Or will the walls be too high even for a billionaire to tear down? Emma followed Adrian down the sidewalk, her breath visible in the cold night air, each step heavier with both fear and anticipation. The hall loomed closer, golden light spilling onto the street, an impenetrable fortress of wealth and social status. Yet Adrian moved with a confidence that suggested the world, or at least this world, bent subtly to his will. Emma stole glances at him, noticing the subtle gleam of an expensive watch, the tailored lines of his suit as symbols of a life she had only glimpsed through magazines and news stories. And yet, despite his wealth, there was an ease, a groundedness, that made him seem human, approachable. "You know," Adrian said casually, "most people think wealth makes you untouchable. It doesn't. It just changes the ways you notice injustice." Emma glanced at him, skeptical but intrigued. "And you notice a lot." He allowed a faint smile. "I notice the overlooked, the ignored, the barred. I've been there myself." His words carried weight, and for a brief moment, Emma saw a flicker of a boy she could almost picture small, watching from the edge of a playground, excluded from birthday parties because of wealth he didn't yet understand. The foreshadowing was subtle but deliberate. This man's empathy had roots in his own experience, and his intervention tonight would not be arbitrary. Flashback: Adrian at 12. Standing outside a grand mansion, clutching a birthday gift he couldn't give without parental permission. Watching other children run past in designer clothes and smiles that didn't include him. A small lesson in patience, strategy, and compassion had been imprinted on him, then the lesson that now guided his actions as he escorted Emma toward the hall. Emma's hands trembled as they approached the entrance. A doorman in a crisp uniform stepped aside when Adrian nodded, his subtle authority unmistakable. Emma's heart raced, the threshold between exclusion and access seemed thinner than ever. Inside, the music swelled, laughter bouncing off chandeliers. She glimpsed her daughter Lily, perched on a chair beside the cake table, her eyes darting nervously toward the doorway. Emma's chest tightened. I don't even know if she'll come to me," she whispered. "She will," Adrian assured her. Children sense the truth of love. They feel it in ways we forget as adults. Another flashback: Lily on a rainy day, holding Emma's hand tightly as they walked to school. A neighbor had whispered judgment, but Lily had squeezed her mother's hand and whispered, "Mommy, it's okay. You're my world." That memory anchored Emma's courage, foreshadowing Lily's eventual defiance of her grandmother's authority. Adrian lowered his voice again. "Just stay calm. Watch, listen, and let the moment unfold. Sometimes the most powerful interventions are quiet ones." Emma nodded, swallowing her fear. She adjusted her scarf and stepped closer to the hall. A subtle glance from Victoria Langley met hers, sharp, calculating, filled with the kind of judgment that could crush a lesser person. But tonight, Emma felt an unspoken shift, a sense that someone, somewhere, was tipping the scales. And then Lily's gaze met hers. A tiny, almost imperceptible nod, a hesitant, questioning, full of hope, bridged the distance between mother and daughter. Every microsecond held weight, and the audience is left gripping their seats. Will Emma finally reclaim her place in her daughter's celebration, or will Victoria's power strike again? Emma's hand trembled slightly as she reached the threshold of the hall, the golden light spilling around her like a barrier she had once thought impenetrable. The music swelled, children's laughter echoing off crystal chandeliers, and she caught sight of Lily perched near the birthday cake, her tiny fingers clutching the doll Emma had sewn herself. Emma's heart ached, but a flicker of determination ignited within her. This was her daughter. No social hierarchy, no wealth, no prejudice could erase that bond. Adrian stepped beside her, quiet but commanding. "Remember," he whispered, "sometimes influence doesn't scream, it guides. Let the moment speak for itself." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her gaze shifted to Victoria Langley, standing near the refreshments, a picture of composure and control. Victoria's sharp eyes scanned the hall, catching Emma's reflection in the glass, and for a fraction of a second, the mask faltered with a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth, a subtle exhale. Foreshadowing. Subtle but effective, the grandmother's authority was strong. But cracks existed, cracks that would widen soon. Flashback. Emma, a few years earlier, had argued with Victoria over Lily's schooling, trying to maintain normalcy despite financial strain. Victoria's voice had cut like ice. You may be her mother, Emma, but wealth decides opportunity. Love alone isn't enough. Those words had haunted Emma for years, planting a seed of defiance and resilience that now pulsed through her veins. Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped forward. Lily's gaze met hers, a silent plea passing between them. Mommy, Lily whispered, hesitating, torn between fear and love. Emma knelt, whispering softly, It's okay, baby. I'm here now, always. The words, tender yet firm, bridged the gap that had seemed insurmountable. Lily's small hand moved toward hers, trembling but determined. The audience feels every heartbeat, the tension, the anticipation, the potential for both triumph and heartbreak. Victoria's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in dynamics. Emma, she said, voice cold but measured, you shouldn't be. Hadrian stepped subtly beside Emma, his presence both shield and statement. She should be wherever her daughter needs her, he said smoothly, his calm authority unmistakable. A medium reveal. Hadrian's quiet intervention signals not brute force but strategic influence, foreshadowing how he will subtly control the outcome without overt confrontation. Emma's flashback returned, sharper this time. Nights spent comforting Lily during storms, whispering, the world may push us out, but we will always find our place. That bond, forged in quiet struggles, now surged to the surface. Lily's hand reached fully for hers, their fingers intertwining like lifelines. Guests whispered, tension rising in the room. Victoria's authority wavered, caught in the delicate balance of tradition, social expectation, and the undeniable force of a mother's love. Every eye in the room sensed the undercurrent, the quiet revolution that Emma's presence represented. Adrian's subtle nod to Emma, almost imperceptible, signaled that the moment was hers. She held Lily close, eyes locking with the grandmother's. The power struggle had begun, but Emma was no longer outside. She was here, and nothing, no wealth, no judgment that could erase that. And the audience is left with the gripping question, will Victoria relent? Or will she escalate the battle to assert control over the celebration? Emma tightened her grip on Lily's small hand as they moved further into the hall, each step a quiet act of defiance. The chandeliers above sparkled, casting golden patterns on the polished floor, yet Emma's eyes were locked only on her daughter. Lily's face was a mixture of relief and lingering fear of the conflict between love for her mother and loyalty to her grandmother writ small across her features. Victoria Langley's gaze followed them, sharp as a blade. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist as if to assert control through wealth alone. Emma, this isn't appropriate, she said, her tone measured, but the quiver in her voice betrayed a crack in her carefully constructed facade. Foreshadowing, the grandmother's control is not absolute. Subtle signs suggest her authority can be challenged. Adrian remained close, silent, yet his presence radiated quiet command. Flashback, as a young man, he had observed his father manipulate social gatherings with a single glance, a nod, or a strategic comment, bending even the proudest to his will. He had learned that influence often worked best through subtlety rather than force, a lesson he was now applying to Emma's situation. Emma knelt to Lily's level, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. You're safe now, baby, she whispered. No one can take us apart. Not today. Not ever. Lily's eyes welled with tears, and she whispered back, I missed you, Mommy. A flashback pierced Emma's mind. Lily waking her in the middle of the night during the months after her father's death, tiny fingers clutching her hand. Mommy, don't go away, Lily had said, her voice trembling. Emma had promised then, in the quiet darkness, that she would never leave her daughter, a vow that had fueled her courage tonight. Adrian's voice cut softly through the tension. Remember, sometimes the hardest battles are won by those who stand quietly, not by those who shout. He glanced at Victoria, whose eyes flickered toward them, sharp and calculating. She will have to decide whether to challenge love itself or step aside. Victoria's subtle movements betrayed her growing unease. The guests whispered behind their hands, sensing the shift in dynamics. Every glance, every slight movement heightened suspense, a micro cliffhanger designed to keep viewers emotionally tethered. Emma rose slowly, holding Lily's hand firmly, and spoke with a calm authority she hadn't known she possessed. Lily doesn't deserve to be caught in someone else's rules. This is her day. I will not let anyone take that from her. A medium reveal. Victoria's expression faltered. The grandmother, for all her wealth and influence, had never faced such quiet and yielding courage before. The subtle cracks in her control foreshadowed the eventual turning point in the celebration, the moment when authority collides with love and integrity. Lily's gaze shifted between Emma and Victoria. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper but firm enough to carry across the room. "Grandma, Mommy is my mommy. I want her here." Gasps echoed softly around the hall. The tension spiked. The audience feels every heartbeat, every micro-decision, every potential fallout. This single moment bridges conflict, emotion, and suspense, pulling viewers deeper into the story. Will Victoria relent, or will she escalate the power struggle in front of everyone? Emma felt Lily's small hand tighten around hers as they stepped closer to the center of the hall, the golden light illuminating the contrast between wealth and love, privilege and perseverance. Each step was heavy with the weight of years she had spent on the outside, battling judgment and exclusion. But tonight, the impossible seemed within reach if only for a fleeting moment. Victoria Langley's eyes narrowed. Her lips pressed into a hard line, the elegance of her designer gown doing little to soften the sharpness of her glare. "Emma, this isn't your place," she said, her tone controlled but brittle. Behind her, guests shifted uneasily, sensing a disruption in the meticulously curated order of the evening. Foreshadowing, the grandmother's authority is fragile, poised to crumble if challenged with quiet, resolute courage. Adrian stepped slightly forward, his presence silent but unmistakably influential. Flashback, as a young man, he had watched corporate empires built and shattered by perception, timing, and subtle interventions. Tonight, he was using that knowledge not for profit, but to protect the bond between mother and daughter. Emma's courage was real, but Adrian's guidance gave her the leverage she needed to navigate the social battlefield. Emma knelt beside Lily, brushing the curls from her forehead. "Remember, baby," she whispered, "love doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't need approval. And it always finds a way." Lily's eyes sparkled with trust and determination, reflecting a bravery that Emma had nurtured quietly over the years. Late nights comforting scraped knees, whispered lessons in kindness, resilience, and self-worth. The flashback anchored the audience's emotional connection, showing why Lily would later defy her grandmother. Victoria's gaze flickered toward the birthday cake, where Lily's classmates laughed and reached for the cupcakes. She opened her mouth to intervene, but the words faltered. The room seemed to shift imperceptibly, micro cliffhanger, as if the walls themselves were witnessing a quiet rebellion. Emma straightened, holding Lily close. "It's her day," she said firmly, voice calm but resolute. "Not yours. Not anyone else's, just hers." A medium reveal. The grandmother's carefully maintained authority, bolstered by wealth and status, now confronted an unassailable truth: the love of a mother cannot be denied. Lily's tiny voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the tension. "Grandma, Mommy is my mommy. She belongs here." Gasps echoed softly across the room. The audience's pulse quickens, emotionally invested in this pivotal moment. Foreshadowing from earlier, the doll, the shared secrets, the nights of whispered promises now pays off as Lily asserts her choice. Bridging fear and courage. Adrian stepped back subtly, letting the moment unfold naturally. He didn't need to intervene. His role was guidance, strategy, and timing. Flashback, his father had once taught him that the strongest influence often comes from allowing others to act, to reveal themselves fully, a lesson Adrian applied flawlessly here. Victoria's shoulders stiffened. She realized, too late, that her power was waning. Every guest in the room now sensed the shift, a quiet, unstoppable force of maternal love combined with strategic intervention. Emma's eyes met Lily's, and in that instant, every fear, every moment of exclusion, every whispered doubt melted. The audience is left gripping the tension. How far will Victoria go? And will love ultimately triumph over social dominance tonight? Emma stood in the center of the hall, Lily clinging to her side, and for a brief moment, the golden light seemed to bend around them, casting a quiet glow of defiance. Every eye in the room watched, some in surprise, others in judgment, but Emma no longer felt small. She could feel the invisible chains of exclusion snapping one by one, replaced with a courage that had been quietly forged in the struggles of the past few years. Victoria Langley's hands tightened on the rim of her champagne glass. Her perfectly manicured fingers betrayed tension she couldn't otherwise show. "Emma, this is highly inappropriate," she said, her voice measured but trembling slightly. The audience senses the cracks in her authority, foreshadowed earlier in her subtle expressions and fleeting gestures. Adrian remained near the doorway, silent but vigilant. Flashback. He had spent years observing the subtleties of influence, how one carefully timed word or gesture could pivot the outcome of even the most rigid social situations. Tonight, he did not need to act forcefully. His presence alone reminded Victoria that power without justice was fragile, and that sometimes, a quiet ally could wield more influence than wealth alone. Emma leaned down, whispering to Lily, "Do you remember the nights we stayed up, making paper crowns and imagining a world where love always wins?" Lily's eyes sparkled with recognition. "I do, Mommy," she said softly but firmly. "I remember you telling me, 'I'm never alone.'" That simple declaration carried the weight of countless moments when Emma had been her daughter's unwavering shield. Reinforcing the audience's emotional investment and foreshadowing Lily's bravery, Victoria's eyes darted around the room, assessing her guests. A subtle realization dawned. Many of the parents and children were watching silently, their allegiance quietly shifting toward Emma and Lily. The micro cliffhanger is palpable. Would the grandmother attempt to enforce her authority, or would she recognize that her power had limits? Emma straightened and spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. "Lily doesn't deserve to be caught in anyone else's rules. This day is hers, not yours, not mine, not anyone else's. She has the right to joy, love, and family." Uninterrupted, the medium reveal here demonstrates that Emma's courage is not only emotional but also strategic, asserting moral authority over social hierarchy. Adrian's subtle nod reinforced her position. He didn't need to intervene. His presence alone reminded everyone of influence backed by respect and resources. Flashback. Adrian as a teenager, standing silently as his father tried to command attention at a gala. Realizing that respect was earned, not demanded, the lesson he now applied perfectly to Emma's situation. Lily's gaze met her grandmother's. "Grandma, Mommy is my mommy. I want her here." The room hushed, every guest holding their breath as the mother-daughter bond unfolded before them. Foreshadowing planted in earlier scenes of the handmade doll, the whispered promises, the resilience nurtured in quiet moments, now culminates in Lily's decisive voice. Victoria's shoulders slumped imperceptibly. The authority she wielded through wealth and status wavered under the undeniable truth of love. The audience feels the tension, curiosity, and emotional release, fully engaged in the unfolding drama. Emma held Lily close, eyes locking with Victoria's for a brief moment, the silent assertion that nothing, not even societal hierarchy, could sever the bond between mother and daughter. The hall was silent for a heartbeat, the air thick with anticipation, every guest frozen in the delicate balance between tradition and justice. Emma stood tall, Lily's small hand clasped in hers, feeling the weight of the past months lift just slightly with each confident step. The golden light reflected off the chandeliers, glinting in the eyes of those who had once dismissed her as insignificant. Tonight, the invisible walls that had kept her out were cracking. Victoria Langley's expression hardened, a mix of disbelief and indignation. She adjusted her necklace, a subtle display of power, but her carefully crafted composure wavered. Flashback. Years ago, she had taught Lily lessons in etiquette and status, shaping the girl with strict rules and expectations. But she had never anticipated that the child she molded would choose love over obedience. Foreshadowing from previous scenes now converges. Lily's courage is the ripple that begins to overturn Victoria's authority. Adrian remained near the entrance, his posture relaxed but commanding, a silent pillar of support. Flashback. Adrian at 17, negotiating a high-stakes deal for his father's company, learning that influence is often about timing and subtlety rather than force. Tonight, he applied that knowledge differently, using patience and presence to shift the balance in Emma's favor without confrontation. Emma lowered her voice, speaking directly to Lily. "You remember our rule, baby, that love always finds a way." Lily's eyes shone. "Yes, Mommy," she said, determination threading through her voice. "I knew you'd come." Her declaration, small yet powerful, was a culmination of every whispered reassurance and quiet bedtime story, a narrative thread paid off with perfect timing. The audience is drawn into the emotional crescendo. Invested in every choice and reaction, Victoria's lips parted, ready to protest, but Adrian subtly stepped forward, not to intervene, but to signal control. His presence alone conveyed authority backed by resources and influence, foreshadowing the unseen leverage he holds. "Sometimes," he said quietly to Victoria, "the strongest power is letting truth reveal itself." Emma straightened, her voice carrying through the hall. "No one should ever be kept from the people they love. Lily's day is about her, and I am her mother. That's all that matters." Medium reveal, the social hierarchy Victoria relied on is now powerless against the undeniable bond of mother and daughter. Lily stepped closer to her mother, placing the tiny handmade doll she had clutched throughout the evening in Emma's hand. "This is for you, Mommy," she whispered. The gesture, simple yet poignant, symbolized the triumph of love over control and foreshadows the final emotional resolution. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room as guests absorbed the quiet defiance. Some whispered admiration, others concern, but all eyes were now on the duo. Victoria's shoulders slumped imperceptibly, a subtle acknowledgement that her authority was slipping, that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. Emma held Lily close, feeling the warmth of victory tempered by relief. Adrian gave a subtle nod, signaling that his quiet guidance had achieved its goal. The stage is now set for the final confrontation and ultimate resolution, a payoff that promises both emotional release and narrative closure. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood in the center, Lily clutching her hand tightly, their bond now unshakable. The golden chandeliers reflected their courage, the sparkle in Lily's eyes brighter than any decoration. Victoria Langley's gaze swept over them, sharp but failing to pierce the quiet authority that radiated from mother and daughter alike. The moment was tense, cinematic, a culmination of every conflict, every whispered promise, every flashback that had brought them here. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, the carefully crafted composure of wealth and social dominance faltered. Flashback, decades earlier, Victoria had trained Lily in etiquette and poise, teaching her that power and control were the keys to respect. But those lessons had underestimated the child's innate wisdom and the mother's unwavering love. Tonight, every carefully constructed rule collided with the reality that love, courage, and truth could not be suppressed by money or influence. Emma's voice rang clear through the hall. "This is Lily's day," she said firmly. "It's about her joy, her happiness, and her right to be surrounded by love, not control. I will never let anyone take that away from her." Lily stepped forward, small but resolute. "Grandma, Mommy is my mommy. I love her, and I want her here." Her words, soft yet powerful, echoed through the room. The audience feels the emotional climax, the tension finally met with courage and truth. Foreshadowing planted in previous scenes of the handmade doll, the whispered bedtime promises. The quiet nights of bonding now pays off fully. Adrian stood slightly behind Emma, his posture relaxed but commanding. Flashback, his years observing power, influence, and human behavior had taught him the importance of timing. His quiet presence now amplified Emma's authority without him needing to intervene overtly. A subtle smile touched his lips as he watched the mother-daughter bond unfold, his role as strategist and silent ally complete. Victoria's shoulders slumped imperceptibly, the realization settling in that her control, however meticulously maintained, could not withstand the undeniable force of maternal love combined with courage and strategic support. She straightened, exhaling slowly. "Emma, I suppose this is your moment," she said, her tone reluctantly respectful. It was a small but significant acknowledgement, a major twist resolved without conflict, showing that power can bend when met with integrity and love. Emma hugged Lily tightly, whispering, "We did it, baby. No one can ever take this away from us." Lily laughed softly, tears glistening on her cheeks, and pressed the handmade doll against her mother's chest, a symbol of love, resilience, and victory over exclusion. Guests whispered, some nodding, others silently impressed, but all were witnesses to the triumph of love over social hierarchy. Foreshadowing from earlier moments, Lily's courage, Adrian's quiet influence, Emma's resilience had converged seamlessly into this cinematic climax. Adrian stepped forward, offering a subtle congratulatory nod to Emma. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the walls we fear most are broken not with force, but with the quiet strength of love and truth." Emma smiled, her heart full. She had reclaimed her place in her daughter's world, the promise of the title fulfilled in a way that was emotional, believable, and deeply satisfying. Outside and inside, the hall was now transformed, not by wealth or status, but by the power of a mother's unwavering love. The audience is left with the perfect resolution. The mother reclaimed her daughter. The grandmother's authority shifted, and a mysterious ally proved that influence combined with empathy could change everything. Scene 10 delivers emotional payoff, completes the mother-daughter arc, resolves the power struggle with Victoria, gives Adrian subtle role closure, and ties all foreshadowing and flashbacks together. The story now fully honors the title. She was shunned from her daughter's celebration. Then a millionaire changed everything.